quiet. Make it quiet. Yeah.
Sì, infatti possiamo anche tranquillamente avvicinarci, non c'è niente che ci induca a porre una distanza, ecco,
no,
mettiamola così. Allora, buonasera, benvenuti, non siamo in tantissimi perché a Roma tra le 16 e le 16:30 è un orario quasi mattiniero in qualche modo, quindi diventa difficile raccogliere tutte le presenze, però siamo anche in live streaming, quindi saremo sicuramente tantissimi anche a distanza. Io vi porto i saluti del Presidente della Società Geografica Italiana, il Professor Filippo Bencardino, che ringrazio di questa opportunità di poter dar vita a questo importante intervento da parte di Jurgen Hasse, un tema che ci rappresenta molto come geografi, ma che soprattutto ci rappresenta molto in questa ambizione di dialogo con discipline affini. Quindi ringraziamento esteso naturalmente a Tonino Griffero. Un ulteriore ringraziamento a Tonino arriva anche dal direttore del Dipartimento Franco Salvatori, che si scusa, ma parallelamente a Tor Vergata ci sono una serie di iniziative che Tonino ben conosce e si stanno svolgendo anche altre attività, quindi una giornata abbastanza densa. Però sono molto contento che Jurgen Hasse sia qui in Società Geografica Italiana, nella sede della Società Geografica Italiana. Jurgen Hasse è un docente all'Università di Amburgo e di Francoforte. Questo suo intervento è un intervento a tutto tondo, perché parliamo di atmosfere nelle città, quindi interessa un ambito di studi della geografia urbana, della geografia culturale, ma anche di tutta la dimensione della geografia che guarda molto all'attenzione delle dinamiche dei segni, della semiotica e quant'altro. La novità sta nel fatto che ci fa molto piacere che possa essere presentato da chi l'ha ospitato qui, peraltro Tonino Grifferi, che non è un geografo, è un filosofo, ma questo ci aiuta ancora di più a lavorare questa interazione per avere uno sguardo sempre più sensibile, sempre più attento, sempre più armonico, se vogliamo, alla dimensione dello sviluppo delle città. Io non mi dilungo oltre perché lascio l'introduzione naturalmente a Tonino, che ringrazio, e estendo ringraziamento veramente al professor Hasse, perché è un grande onore averlo qui e dà peraltro un respiro internazionale alle attività che pianifichiamo, e ci pone una condizione quindi di poter lavorare assieme anche su argomenti così vari e così articolati che richiedono sempre di più sguardi più attenti e più approfonditi per una programmazione, un'attenzione alle nostre città che risentono di un bisogno sostanziale di vivere atmosfere differenti oppure di riconoscere atmosfere all'interno delle stesse. Tonino, a te l'introduzione.
Grazie Simone, ringrazio i presenti, ringrazio la Società Geografica per aver accolto l'invito a ospitare qui la prima delle relazioni che Jurgen Hasse terrà a Roma. Ne terrà esattamente 3 in una settimana, lo dico subito, la prossima sarà venerdì al Museo Andersen all'interno del ciclo di Sensibilia alle ore 17. I temi naturalmente sono diversi, quindi le relazioni sono tutte differenti. All'interno del ciclo Sensibilia venerdì alle 17 al Museo Andersen, Jurgen Hasse parlerà della differenza fra Stimmungen e atmosfere. Atmosferen. Da questo punto di vista, questo ci permette subito di capire qual è il taglio che Jurgen Hasse dà a queste sue lezioni, perché io conosco non da molto Jurgen Hasse, ma attraverso i suoi libri l'ho conosciuto una decina d'anni fa. Ha insegnato geografia, appunto geografia umana a Francoforte, ancora insegna e torna a insegnare come senior professor quest'anno all'Università di Francoforte, alla Goethe Universität. Ha sempre avuto un interesse spiccato per le cose teoriche e filosofiche, e quindi io, raccontandoli molto rapidamente, ma senza voler però dimenticare dei passaggi essenziali, i suoi principali lavori, vi voglio far notare come i suoi interessi sono andati appunto orientandosi verso il rapporto, che è anche il sottotitolo dell'incontro di oggi, tra geografia e filosofia. Dunque, io segnalo qui dei molti libri di Jurgen Hasse, alcuni. Intanto i primi riguardano Heimat und Landschaft, über Gartenswege, Centerparks e andere Ästhetisierungen. Quindi il primo libro che qui viene citato è un libro sul paesaggio, come dice il titolo, sulla patria e paesaggio e su anche fenomeni non troppo consueti di analisi degli studiosi, per esempio gli gnomi da giardino che compaiono nel titolo, i parchi e altre forme di estetizzazione. Allora si capisce subito che Jurgen Hasse, geografo, ha una relazione particolarmente forte con l'estetica, con i problemi di estetizzazione della vita quotidiana nei nostri centri urbani, soprattutto, come vedremo. Un secondo lavoro, stiamo parlando di lavori del 1993, un lavoro successivo è quello Ästhetische Rationalität und Geographie, Wahrnehmungsgeographische Studien zur Regionalentwicklung, quindi razionalità estetica e geografia, studi di geografia della percezione sullo sviluppo regionale. L'interesse quindi della geografia naturalmente è ben presente, ma come capite appunto c'è sempre questa parola estetisch, che ha quindi un legame molto forte con i suoi interessi. Io conosco i lavori di Jurgen Hasse in realtà dal terzo dei libri qui che vedo nel suo curriculum, cioè Erlebnisräume vom Spaß zur Erfahrung del 1994. Erlebnisräume, quindi spazi di Erlebnis, spazi di esperienza vissuta. Ecco, questo vom Spaß, cioè dal divertimento, insomma, all'esperienza, Erfahrung. E questo mostra subito come la città diventa via via, diventa il cuore degli interessi di Jurgen Hasse, della sua ricerca. La città come luogo, sapete, allora negli anni 90 si parlava molto di postmoderno, di estetizzazione della vita, di estetizzazione della vita quotidiana, eccetera. Io ricordo con piacere questi libri, i primi che ho letto di Jurgen Hasse, proprio per questa capacità anche critica di non, come dire, non pagare un eccessivo dazio all'estetizzazione postmoderna di quegli anni e cercando di mettere in luce anche gli aspetti socialmente problematici di questa estetizzazione, di questa postmodernità. Mediale Räume è un libro successivo del 97, Wahrnehmungsgeographische Studien zur Regionalentwicklung, ancora sullo sviluppo regionale, ma vengo ai libri più filosofici per me, soprattutto Fundsaken der Sinn, che è il primo libro che io ho letto, e poi andando a riscoprire i precedenti di Jurgen Hasse, eine phänomenologische Revision alltäglichen Erlebens. Allora, Fundsaken si traduce come oggetti smarriti, oggetti trovati, insomma, qualcosa che è andato perduto dei sensi. E infatti è un libro molto orientato ad una rilettura fenomenologica di come i sensi entrano in gioco, anche quelli considerati negletti o secondari, come entrano in gioco invece nella percezione della vita quotidiana, cioè appunto di nuovo degli aspetti, diciamo così, della vita quotidiana e delle esperienze vissute. Avete notato che la parola Erlebnis comincia a comparire tipicamente nella cultura tedesca, è molto presente e segnala la differenza tra Erlebnis ed Erfahrung, naturalmente, cioè l'Erfahrung è un'esperienza, diciamo, mi viene da dire, un po' più generica e meno connotata dal punto di vista esistenziale, mentre Erlebnis è invece, fin da Wilhelm Dilthey in seguito, una esperienza che ha come dire, ha un cuore, una unità, che si differenzia dal resto del flusso esperienziale, del flusso del tempo. Quello è un grosso libro, mentre gli altri sono libri più piccoli. Questo Fundsaken der Sinn è un grosso libro in cui tra l'altro Jurgen Hasse ha il grande merito di ricostruire in modo molto chiaro la storia di un problema che ai geografi dovrebbe stare molto a cuore, cioè il problema dello spazio vissuto, cioè il conflitto tipico della filosofia fenomenologica del Novecento tra lo spazio geometrico, lo spazio metrico, lo spazio dimensionale e lo spazio vissuto. E infatti Jurgen Hasse in questo libro ricostruisce una serie di capisaldi, a partire da Erwin Strauss, per venire a Durkheim, per venire insomma agli altri autori, Merleau-Ponty, eccetera, cioè gli autori, i fenomenologi, i grandi fenomenologi del Novecento, che hanno insistito appunto sulla dimensione dello spazio vissuto come qualitativamente diversa dallo spazio fisico geometrico. Distinzione che credo anche oggi, naturalmente, un fenomenologo deve accettare, forse anche un geografo che è particolarmente sensibile alle esperienze che si fanno nei luoghi in cui si vive. Ancora, a volte Jurgen Hasse invece si è dedicato a temi molto più, come potremmo dire, più occasionali o curiosi, o anche, se volete, di casi di studio, in un certo senso. Per esempio c'è un libro sul parcheggio, sulla dimensione dei parcheggi, Übersehene Räume, zur Kulturgeschichte und Heterotopologie des Parkhauses, per esempio. C'è un libro, per esempio, questo anche interessante, sull'abitare, altro tema tipicamente che incrocia filosofia e geografia, e diciamo anche architettura, per dirla tutta, unbedachtes Wohnen, Lebensformen an verdeckten Rändern der Gesellschaft, quindi l'abitare però nelle zone marginali. Infatti è un libro in cui si parla di come è vissuto l'abitare, per esempio, nella casa di riposo, come è vissuto in carcere, nel chiostro religioso, insomma, in condizioni in cui l'abitare è messo in discussione oppure accentuato. Atmosphären der Stadt è proprio il titolo di un suo libro del 2012, Aufgespürte Räume, un libro del 2012 che fa il punto esattamente su questo tema su cui si è concentrato soprattutto in questi ultimi anni e su cui si concentrerà anche nell'incontro di oggi. Ma non voglio tralasciare gli ultimi libri perché scrive molto Jurgen Hasse giustamente, quindi pubblica molte cose interessanti. Uno degli ultimi libri è Was Räume mit uns machen und wir mit ihnen, kritische Phänomenologie des Raumes, che cosa gli spazi fanno con noi, diciamo così, e cosa facciamo noi con loro, quindi una fenomenologia critica dello spazio che appunto, come vi ho detto prima, è da tempo al centro del suo interesse. Der Leib der Stadt, un libro successivo del 2015, Phänomenographische Annäherung, quindi il corpo, Leib è un altro termine chiave della fenomenologia naturalmente, in quanto distinto da Körper. Il corpo è il corpo fisico, il Leib è il corpo in quanto è vissuto, questo fin da Husserl in poi. E qui si parla di corpo quindi della città, intesa in un senso evidentemente non materiale, o non soltanto materiale. Il Leib è il corpo per come viene sentito e vissuto della città. C'è poi un altro libro molto, molto strano, perché evidentemente incrocia interessi in cui la geografia viene applicata a casi particolari, per esempio questo Versunkene Seelen, il penultimo libro di Jurgen Hasse, Begräbnisplätze, ertrunkener Seeleute in 19. Jahrhundert, quindi un libro sui cimiteri dei marinai. Vedete come il suo interesse a volte va anche a collocarsi, io credo giustamente, specie per un geografo, su casi di studio molto particolari, che naturalmente vengono presi a titolo d'esempio di qualcosa di più universale, di più grande. L'ultimo libro appena uscito, che non ho avuto ancora il piacere di leggere, è Die Aura des Einfachen, Mikrologien räumlichen Erlebens, l'aura del semplice, quindi micrologie dell'esperienza vissuta nello spazio. E, quindi, ecco, questo è il quadro. Come vedete, geografia e filosofia da sempre intrecciate, in particolare nella filosofia di tipo fenomenologico. Non è un mistero che entrambi siamo molto vicini alla Neue Phänomenologie di Hermann Schmitz, è questa nuova corrente che si sta sviluppando in Germania, che ormai ha qualche decennio, e perché proprio queste capacità di interagire fra discipline diverse mi sembra la cifra fondamentale di questo nuovo approccio fenomenologico. Ma lascio subito la parola a Jurgen Hasse, e oggi, come sapete, parlerà di The Atmospheres of Cities, a Neglected Relationship, Geography and Philosophy.
Thank you very much for the introduction. No, it's good. Senor, but I continue it in Italy, sorry, so I must change now into English. It's a very great pleasure for me to have a lecture in such architecture with a sublime atmosphere and this Herumwirklichkeit, like Durkheim would explain this. And this is the matter of this lecture, the atmospheres, and in this, the atmospheres of cities. And you named it, that it is a neglected relationship inside geography, in German language geography, and I think also in the great areas of English geography in Great Britain and USA. If you come home into your own city, you will not recognize objective structures and spatial facts in your environment. At least you will not do this at first. Of course, in the sight of streets and buildings, you feel that you are at home and not in any city. But there is an important difference between knowledge and feeling. According to the consciousness of space, it's more important to feel than to know this. This would be the case when you feel with your environment and you are affected from this feeling. Indeed, this is something twofold. At the one hand, we can talk about a feeling like the rush on the main streets, and at the other hand, we can talk about an emotional involvement through this feeling, and this means in the mode of emotional distance. We can talk about the appeal of a city, perhaps in the view of tourism. But also we can talk about nearly the same in the personal perspective of hometown. This is quite another matter, because in the first one we talk about a factual environment, and in the second about a social environment. This is reflected in a feeling without distance. In words of Heidegger's philosophy, we could name this feeling a kind of being with. The most powerful impression in this is based in atmospheres. Right in the middle of my lecture, I will discuss the topic of atmospheric feelings in a city and its importance according to our understanding of the urban world from the subjective position, but from the viewpoint of making the city through politics too. The topic of atmospheres is not part of human geography's mainstream. When we talk about atmospheres in natural science, we address quite another context of climate and weather. But there are relations insofar as both atmospheres are felt qualities. Carlfried Graf von Durkheim named these feelings vital qualities in a circumreality, in German Vitalqualitäten, and the word of circumreality is very difficult to translate. He named it Herumwirklichkeit. These you cannot measure like a temperature or humidity. An atmosphere only you can feel, not with your body in the material sense, but with your felt body as a kind of being with. It don't works. Oh. No. We'll find it. Solution. How I will proceed with this matter in my following lecture. Firstly, I go to discuss a broad outline of the concept of atmosphere. We understand it in philosophy, and it could be relevant for human geography too. Oh yeah, thank you. By the way, I'm sure geography can benefit from the philosophical conceptualization, the matter of being with the city, because this knowledge offers us a better base to understand politics of making the city by aestheticization, especially under the mode of postmodernism. Secondly, there are some important influencing factors which make an atmosphere to discuss. For example, weather, light, and temperature. Then I will illustrate atmospheres in the double focus. Firstly, embellishment, the city. Embellishment, the city, this in the postmodern debate on aestheticization. And second, the specific aesthetic of brownfields inside the collapsing city. Finally, I attach some notes on the benefit of the atmosphere concept and the challenge to produce useful explications of a personal experience of impressions. These we can only make in the first person, because they are feelings, and that means our own feelings. For this reason, I will present you, parallel to my words, some images. So finally, we have to discuss also the question how we could gain from the relationship between two modes of explication emotional experiences, by words and by images. It is a phenomenological topic how to use the expression of images for thinking and reflecting our being in the world. As a whole, there is a framing epistemological question on the benefit of a better neighborhood between philosophy and human geography. From the German and also the English perspective today, there we have not to notice a lack. Instead, there is a very tight connection from geography to social science. In this sociological homelands, it's usual to think the scientific objectives in other relations than in philosophy. I don't intend to discuss philosophical matters in detail, but and explicitly in stronger philosophical terms, but I will use its theoretical concepts to show the benefits to improve the epistemological orientation in geography grasping the world. What are atmospheres? How we understand an atmosphere is guided by philosophy of science. Meta-theoretical orientations dispose the framework of thinking. In human geography, the understanding of atmospheres is closer connected to sociology but philosophy. When Niklas Luhmann emphasizes an atmosphere can never be a space by itself, because it cannot become visible, he is overlooking an essential point. We cannot only see spaces with our eyes, we can feel them too, in the mode of smelling, hearing, touching, and sensing. In all these perceptions, just the felt body ensures a feeling as a spatial form of self-consciousness. The best predestinated example will be a situation of silence, which is completely different than quietness in an acoustic sense. Quietness is perceptible by listening when sounds are reduced or nearly vanished in the background. In the case of silence, there is another quality of nothing in the circum-reality. It's a full nothing. We feel as something from ourselves, but not as something from our material body. The example of silence will illustrate another important feature of atmosphere. Here I mean an entity which is not based on any personal action or decision. It is at this point we find the second great misunderstanding the nature of atmospheres in social science theory, because there is, in general, it conceptualizes as a relation like we know from the order of material things. Another example will illustrate this misunderstanding the atmospheres. It concerns the feeling of protophobia and even the atmosphere of thunderstorm. Both are perceptible vital qualities in the sense of Durkheim, which are not related to any material thing. A lot of atmospheres expressing only what happened. Others are product of planning and human interests. We will return to this matter later. Atmospheres are interfaces which let us feel with the felt body our circum-reality. That is different from the environment. In our environment, material things are around us, but in a circum-reality, all these and many more we cannot count but sense in our field. Gernot Böhme labels this interface with the concept of a between. The cities at all times have been full of atmospheres like this. We more feel than recognize with the mind. But in general, they are dispersed in space, in another kind than a house or a bridge. Atmospheres are shrouding and beclouding a space, and they will make it to a very specific place. With Sloterdijk, we can think the influence of an atmosphere attacks us like blind immersion. What we sense in these nebulizations is what we feel like a three-dimensional space, which is not measurable like a geodesic or a mathematic space. Hermann Schmidt defines this phenomenological space as a feeling we can sense in two modes. Firstly, as a feeling from an emotional distance, and secondly, in the personal situation of affective involvement. But this differentiation is contentious and therefore discussed again and again. But I think the difference is very simple and means only this. You can notice an atmosphere as level-headed matter, but you can also be seized with delight or grief, fear or vitality. Atmospheres are rooting in situations. These consist of three elements: facts, something what exists, programs, something should believe too, and thirdly, problems, something is indistinct and uncertain. Because situations are sources of meaning, in atmospheres we can feel these in a specific kind of presence, perhaps inside the feeling of grief, fear or vitality. Hence, atmospheres are living entities in a special way. They are moving from one vital quality to another. They can interfere with others, and they can obliterate it by other ones. The rhythm of a city is sensible through atmospheres. Just as urban life is changeable inside the times of a day, a season, and a year, so the atmospheres are reflecting this process of current transformation. But they will show us also the political change of a city from postmodern splendor to its post-industrial decline. The phases of space are reflecting not only facts, but also they call us to think of the connected affectivity of inhabitants. You can have an atmospheric feeling like you cannot have an atmospheric feeling like a book in your hand. You have it like a fever or a pleasure. They are communicating meanings to us by gestures, metaphors, or synesthesias. All these signifying modes will suggest anything more than explain it like we are at home with spoken or written sentences. Explication of a feeling in words is limited. Explication in an aesthetic way is limited too, but in another kind. And so it could be fruitful to think for interrational crossings. If we can explain the situation in different modes, we can speak and think better about ourselves, politics, and environmental matters. Atmospheres are ending up in its appearance. Sharing is possible, but we cannot divide them into several parts. They are whole entities. Hubert Tellenbach, a psychiatrist, says they are something which is present. And also, by this reason, they cannot be expressed in a simple way like we use to explain the things we have in our car or anywhere else. Atmospheres have a powerful influence on actual feelings in a space. This can be the result of something happened like rain, but also an image of a building site in the inner city. When powerful agents are able to make atmospheres in the urban space, they demonstrate an important influence over the feeling of inhabitants and their being with the city. Thus, it's possible to guide people in an ideological sense. By this way, they can be turned into a situation of acceptability with regard to actual social conditions within the urban society. This kind of tuning minds will not address a specific style of rational thinking, but a synchronized feeling. Willy Hellpach mentions this in German. It's not translatable so easy with the term ergehen. It's another declaration of a special kind of feeling, an actual feeling. Methodologically, atmospheres are not related to the class of things. Their immaterial character will signify them nearly as a strange object. Hammerschmidt grasped this exception to create the term of half-things. Tonino Guerrero translated this with semi-things. These are set apart from things because we cannot say where a half-thing has been during its absence. The feature whereby atmospheres are only existing in the time of their presence is verifiable very easy with the example of the wind, happiness, grief, aggression, or noise. Eventually, this includes that every feelings are half things too, because atmospheres are feelings. It is evident that emotions and atmospheres are a very important matter, not only in everyday life and in private worlds, but also in politics, economy, and city government. Well-being of people firstly depends on good feelings and not on good arguments for anything. But at the same time, we have to consider a low importance of feelings as a category in scientific discourse in the matter of urbanism. Thinking urban affairs is a contingent on material and monetary matters. Most relevant in city governance as well as society as a whole are political and ideological values too. Especially in political concerns, feelings play a crucial role behind simple matters. But in these, they are often neglected. Because Theresa May, during the Tower fire in last summer in London, didn't demonstrate her sympathetic feelings and offered no commiserations, she got a big problem of political acceptance. Indeed, there is a gap between the real importance of feelings in society and the recognition of it. The reasons of this emotional importance have long roots going into the history of civilization. The Western people are socialized as rational and not as pathic subjects. Following there are problems guiding the consequences of making political decisions. This seem to be grounded by rational reasons only, but indeed they are full of feelings. So we have to consider a contradiction between what we talk and what we feel about. Only remember the imperative of political correctness. Atmospheres do not fall from the sky like anything. Just the weather is disposed by actual climate dispositions. And the same we have to consider according the vibrancy of a public square, the comprehensive feeling in a dark underpass, or the sedation of glamorous architecture, for example, a postmodern warehouse. Each urban space people perceive and feel in vital qualities of atmospheres. But they do not recognize this form of emotional perception. All the more, it's important to consider the power of feelings which comes from the public places as well as emotional modes of being with the urban world. There are two ways of reasoning the benefit of reflecting these influences. The first is based on the theory of political governance, and the second on self-governance, in the term of Michel Foucault. Reflecting about atmospheres justifies itself by a double care. It's a care, it's a matter of Foucault, for the urban world and for the subject and his conscious of himself. I illustrate now 8 points of influencing factors making urban atmospheres. The first is urban building cultures. Buildings are aesthetic expressions of its own history. Culture from this perspective is working like a tuning fork, which reflects not only characteristic constructional designs, but the spirit of the time too. We have in German the word of Zeitgeist. So we can understand facades as seismographic interfaces which are expressing itself by atmospheres. The sobriety and the maximum of simplicity new houses has been erected in Germany in the 1960s and 70 years today tells us a lot about the concept of man in the view of architects and political decision makers of that time. Of course, mostly these styles not have been a result of decisions, but a response to the spirit of the time. But the new buildings had a very powerful influence to people feeling in their urban world. One second point, odors. Sometimes spatial atmospheres are belonging to an odor, as an immaterial part of a located object or a spatial structure like a market. Many people can remember the nearly fixed combination of being with a local space and an odor they can feel in this way only at this place. These are not metaphorical perceptions, but such in synesthesia. They are deeply rooted in a personal history of growing up in an area. Odors we can realize with the brain, but also with the smell. And therefore, they challenge us to develop a transversal language of explanation feelings into a verbal mode of communication. Many towns are perceptible by its smell, especially in specific areas, for example, nearby a refinery or a fruit market. Mostly, atmospheres of a town are not related to the whole city, but only to local places. Smells are telling stories, and they do it with a single blow. I come to the next point, light and shade. In the atmosphere of the city, eventually we have to recognize the interaction between technical and natural lights. The professional illuminators know this, and so they plan their installations in coordination with the natural change of sunshine and moonlight. Lighting conditions are important elements influencing the process of constitution atmospheres. Lighting is connected with symbols and mythical narratives. Especially the sacral spaces light is a manifold symbol. Great Gothic church builders were staging highly impressive lighting atmospheres. They built tall windows with colored glasses and put man in a situation of seduction. We know that masters of liturgy combine effects of illumination with the smell of frankincense. In postmodern urban worlds, we are confronted with the secular variants of this technique of manipulate people, for example, in the big warehouses, where architecture will be a suggestive medium to infiltrate customers' free will in order to push the business. Also, postmodern projects of illumination of the city are indirectly guided by ideologies. In times of alternating crisis in politics, there is a great need for embellishing the city. The sweet glamour will calm down people's unrest and potential storms of riot. We have to differentiate between a surface of aestheticization and one in depth. Mostly the first one will have its own face in a deep-rooted rationality of feelings. Sounds. Urban spaces do not only have their own face, they also have their own sounds. Because words, and under the condition of postmodernity, even more images are the guiding media, we follow the tendency to neglect other modes of communication and affection. But sounds are framing the world around us like odor and light. Sound will evoke us in an immersive way more than other sensual impressions. In our circumvirality, we find us not only in intellectual ways, not only as actors, but as passive individuals too. Passing a tunnel, we hear something different than walking through a graveyard. There is another feeling walking through a foggy evening or a raining afternoon. Through their materials, also houses produce their own sounds. They have a special response, telling the story of a genius loci. Around the year 1900, the architect August Andel described the voices of a town. And he illustrated his impressions not in the way of exactly, but poetical writing. In this sense, he noticed a rattling and rumbling of postal vans, the clicking of the horses' hoofs and the asphalt, on the asphalt, and the sluggish steps of the carriage horses, and so on. The example of Andel's way to speak will show us an edge of scientific language. In its precision, it can define everything and make it understandable in a common style, but it comes to an irrevocable end when we try to use this terminological language to express an atmospheric experience. The air. We cannot feel the air in a direct way. It's perceptible by smells, humidity, or things are flying around. In the matter of feeling, the atmosphere is a place. The air implies an affecting impact because it conveys peace of mind in a case of calm, or unrest perhaps in a situation of shaking storm. Not only in the open landscape we have sensitive to this influence of moving air, but also in the middle of our cities. Always we respond to changing conditions around us mimetically. So we feel contractedness in a piercing cold wind, or expandedness in a calm or warm setting. Condition of the air is tuning embodied involvement in general. Fog makes poor visibility and rain fast walking. There is a lot of metaphoric meaning too, indicating feeling qualities. Luft machen means in German making space for a new development and in a district, and dicke Luft, a dense atmosphere. Mostly metaphors have epistemic and historical roots, and so it's difficult to communicate them cross-culture. Only sometimes feeling the whole town is characterized by a quality of air. A specific air mostly blows in quarters, local spaces, local places, near a river, or in a neighborhood. This implies an important reference to our understanding atmospheres of a city in general, because they are located in a swimming mode of large but not in small scale spaces. Therefore, they constitute sensible boundaries and shifting situations we can feel walking in unknown cities and towns as spaces of changing and flowing transitions. My sixth point is rhythm and movement. People are moving through the urban space in a specific manner. By this, they are presenting themselves in a habitual mode. So they are moving not only in an allocative sense. In the kind of moving, they show us a specific affective involvement. This will be visible not only moving through the space, but also sitting or lying at a local point. This kind to be in the space will not only represent a social rank inside a group, like Bourdieu tells us. People are moving quickly or slowly, hectic or relaxed, and these modes of moving don't tell us anything we could understand in a sociological way. People move one way or another because they are feeling in a specific kind of being with. And in this, they produce the rhythm of urban spaces. In the morning, different from the evening, and so on. People are tuned in their mood to a specific space, and through this, they will tune urban atmospheres. The office workers in the central business district make another spatial rhythm compared to an old man in a park within the city. But also architecture will hold a larger share of urban rhythm. Green areas dispose other kinds of movements than highly structured areas, perhaps by traffic architecture. Eventually, whole cities have their own rhythm, which will tell us a lot of the history of the social world and the situation of its inhabitants. Not only office workers are present in another kind than fishermen at their ships. The rhythm in a town with young people is different to those in a town with very old people, as well as there is a great difference between an office district and a tourist city. Rhythm is one of the essential atmospheric expressions to feel as the color of a city, like Lewis Mumford would say. Looks and sights. Atmospheres only can unfold their immersive influence to people if they are sensible. We feel them being with a space, looking through a window or looking at a building, a bridge, or anything else. But an atmosphere will not be remarkable because we have seen it with our eyes alone. Perception is more than a visual act. Seeing anything is only a part of felt bodily communication. It opens a relationship in which feeling and thinking are flowing together. A wall is not only perceptible with the eyes. It does express itself by suggestions of motion too. A sharp edge will tune our being with a place in another kind than a round edge. The touching things create our affective involvement. If we say a building is looking at me, in theory of geography and social science, this point of view is very alien. But in history of phenomenology, we find other contexts of understanding. Otto Friedrich Bollnow and Romano Guardini had around 1950 a discussion on the question of encounter, respectively meeting. This debate includes the question if a subject can be looked at by a thing or a person. While Bollnow argued encounter, Begegnung in German, only is thinkable in the form of meeting, means can only happen between persons, Guardini supported another position. He understood Begegnung, encounter, in the sense of it means encounter, which means it can happen also between a person and a thing, an animal and a plant. In philosophy of science, especially Guardini's attitude will show us a perspective which let appear half things like the wind in the mode of a gesture. So in the viewpoint of phenomenology, our environment is our shared world. In the words of Heidegger, the Mitwelt. Following in another ethical relationship to the world around us than is customary in capitalism. Because not everything in the world is made for us, We have to rethink our obligation, especially to living things as animals, but also to everything outside of ourselves. And so we come to animals. Animals which are present at a place have their own atmospheric influence. This is based on several reasons. We have to remember the etymological meaning which inherents special groups of animals. While a seagull represents freedom and ease, the black crow, contrary, signifies dark mythical meanings. Birds are living in a different element than dogs, cats and horses. So the animals are acting its own part in constitution horizons of vibrancy in the urban space. But it's not only their visual presence, but also the sensual sound which transforms urban areas into soundscapes. Animals we don't understand only with the brain, but in a synesthetic way of perception too. In the way of embodied communication, they talk to us and challenge an immediately response. Excellent examples are offered by Rilke and Canetti. Both mention cats help us feel soundlessness and silence. I will finish clarification other medias influencing feeling atmospheres at this point. We see atmospheres will constitute by many variables are not produced by humans at all. In the viewpoint of constructivism, it's furthermore necessary to see the powerful role of people making atmospheric vital qualities of space and place. Two examples of man-made atmospheres in a direct and in an indirect way I will discuss following. The wave of aestheticization which affects European metropolises since the 1990s and beginning some 10 years earlier in the USA and in Great Britain has permanently changed the image of urban post-war modernism, especially in the city centers. The aesthetic effort to enhance the atmospheric quality of experience follows a bundle of varieties, above all economic and political interests, but also cultural flows. Metropolises began to compete in the immersive field of aesthetic, both to realize new options and to neutralize political and social excitement. In the medium of appearance, companies as well as public institutions, at first above all in the West, strove to demonstrate cultural superiority. Eccentric and effective gestures of construction, remodeling, transcription and scenographic reprogramming urban scenes expressed themselves as well in presentation as in representation. The logic of presentation is semiotically open and thus permits a broad interplay of cultural association, collage, and performative adaptation. Its medium is the fascination and of experience. Companies and public institutions participate similarly in the effects of presentative improvement in qualities of locations. Under the condition of depoliticized subject, an apparatus of feeling regulation through the culture industry, in the sense of Adorno, spreads. Finally, postmodern aestheticism fills the vacuum of moral values and political programs. Representation follows a relative linear logic. It communicates proposals of significance which can be of economic, political, or cultural nature according to their systemic function. Representative buildings of companies communicate an excess of meaning, playing with magic insofar as they suggest credibility, gravity, power, and trustworthiness. In a structurally similar manner, major state institutions exploit the same means of radical seduction in their architectural staging. While the aesthetic interests of companies are economically coded, public institutions attempt to inculcate a feeling of identification with the city or region, not via political compulsion, but rather through the dissuasive effects of fascination. In the period of neoliberalism, the aestheticized images of the cities represent not least lifestyles. Their depoliticized potential is expressed in beautiful aesthetic forms. The poor glamour of the apparently aseptic city becomes the standard of a generalized aesthetic expectation of perception and experience. The physical cleaning of the city so reflects in one of its deep effects the post-critical cleaning regime of perception. That's the surface and the deep structure of aestheticization. Wolfgang Welch made this to a topic in philosophy in the 1990 years. The perception of aesthetic forms, concepts and situations of representation can be reduced neither to vision nor to symbolic understanding alone. The aesthetic suggestive foundation of reality expresses the logic of an aesthetic dispositive in the sense of Foucault. Current aesthetizational offensives communicate secret arrangements of non-verbal powers beyond the spoken word. Elevating the experience of material things to the sublime generates a particularly penetrating fascination at city halls, company headquarters, court buildings, bridges, and so on. The World Fair at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century served culturally to communicate fascination through technical superior achievement. Superiority breaks through the barrier between rationality and irrationality, because it awakes intense feelings whose attraction lies in a situational, irresolvable ambivalence, in a feeling of the unity of the beautiful and hideous, of fascination and defense. The embellished city is just today a second nature world. What we identify with it is transforming into an expectation of a visible image, the built face of a city. This is interfaced essentially through atmospheres. So we see the political impact of a seemingly apolitical matter. The following example will show the inverting effect, the happened atmosphere as a mirror of failed development, the architectural decline of whole urban areas in the face of wastelands. And I use this topic to show some images in order to discuss the above-mentioned question, how we can gain from the relationship between two modes of explication, emotional experiences, by words and by images. Firstly, some remarks to the special atmospheric character of brownfields. The characteristic feature of wastelands lies in the sensory presence of the past shape of human usage. Wastelands draw attention to themselves in the form of contradiction of feelings, fascination and repulsion together. Visually, they are perceptible in the actual space. In the atmospheric space, they are noticeable with the felt body. The main quality of a brownfield becomes present in the process of its spatial experience. While there may be single items in a brownfield or in its neighborhood, that are typical of it, such as broken windows and empty buildings or cracked asphalt. Wastelands appearance themselves arise in a comprehensive fashion. Therefore, a wasteland should be understood as a situation whose meanings condense into a blurred unit, but not into a confused one. The determinate element of the past shape of human usage of the space. This becomes specific in the image of the products of man-made landscapes be left behind from people, often tragically. The spatial emptiness of a fallow field lets arise an atmospheric emptiness. This reflects the aesthetic of a monotonous location. But a brownfield is not empty like a room. It is abundant, and in the quality of having been abundant by a once violent liveliness, it expresses the withdrawal of a social world. The visible transformation of object touches on the temporal horizon of the future and leads on into a dread of being abandoned existentially. A brownfield is a transverse space too, and an image of an open shift. Its duration, as well as the prospect of its optional transition, remains obscure. This undecided quality alone makes a brownfield into a space of uneasiness that makes itself felt in the atmosphere of abandonment. In a sense, the present day of a brownfield has been abandoned by time. With a word from Georg Simmel, its spatial environment is constituted in an extreme intensification and fulfillment of the present form of the past. The meanings that atmospheres develop with the experience of space depend above all on whether the brownfield comes to the attention as an object of potential assimilation or as a fact of perceptual experience. As an object, it becomes a focus of conceptual and planning decisions. When a brownfield is evaluated as a reserve area for a new usage, or as a potential ecological compensation area, it is not a matter of its atmosphere or aesthetics. By contrast, however, it also has a factual value which expresses itself in an atmospheric way. And this has its characteristic quality as a transitory space. These are four images, not one. Four images of the Southern Street in Manchester, seeming nearly identical. Inner city of suburban wastelands have a tense relationship with the city. The chaos of the brownfield mocks the superficially aestheticized city, whose appearance of beautification suggests eternal prosperity. Atmospheres of dirt, decay, and disintegration express an image of dystopia. While the historical ruin has been left behind, as it were, the inner city wastelands, as a sign of collapse, looms into the future. The ruin is aesthetically completed as a site of transfiguration by the unbridled overgrowth of spontaneous vegetation and is ingrained in the history. The transitory situation symbolizes a loss of control in a political and social world. Its aesthetic is split into two affective perspectives. Firstly, desperation of vis-à-vis the continuing decline, and secondly, hope on a soon refreshing development. I stopped this contemplation, the atmospheric aura of brownfields, in order to change inside this topic, to some final remarks to the benefit of photographic images understanding situation. At present, only 6 photographs from a crashing area, especially the quarter of the old fish docks in Grimsby, Great Britain, have been the world's greatest fish harbor in the 19th century. It's a bank. Have been a bank. After Cold War for more considerable fishing rights in favor of Iceland in the 50s and 60s years, the fishing markets and industries come under pressure, and the buildings of 3 large areas, Fish Dock 1, 2, Fish Dock 2, 3, began to decay. Number 3 was created just in the 1930 years. In geography, it's usual to characterize a development like this with scientific words, illustrated with some images. But the leading rationality of these images has its roots in arguments of reason and not in the free game of aesthetics. Well, thinking in theory about anything will come to other results than feeling about the same matter through the media of photography. There are extensive debates in the theory of photography just at its early time in the 19th century. The rising question at this point is a transversal one. What can we learn from an aesthetic encounter in contrast to a scientific one? Expresses itself only in factual words. The high potential of aesthetics for science has not been exhausted until today. Furthermore, both modes of rationality are considered to be incommensurable by tradition. The postmodern process of city beautification gives us an answer also in this matter. It will show us that in the mode of aesthetics, people are tangible emotionally. And so they also could be stimulated to think about their environment and their structures, made themselves like they are. For writing a science with this means, aesthetic expressions could pressure to find new ways of thinking and modeling our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Jurgen, for this lecture, and we can discuss, possiamo discutere, insomma, possiamo, il tempo che abbiamo, il tempo l'abbiamo, non è un problema, se mi commenta, One question? In English, please.
I don't understand all of the discussion because my English is not how it's possible to communicate in the tourist atmosphere in website or another possibility way?
Acoustically, not.
Okay. How can we communicate, express this atmosphere of city for a touristic purpose?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Really, I think it's a very important matter, and it's a central object of planning. Because the touristic attractivity of a city and also a landscape, each destination in tourism is in its central importance a matter of atmosphere. Yeah? And so touristic planners, I think, have to discuss and to think about the features of making atmospheres, and especially according to the question which atmosphere they want to produce. Not each atmosphere is wanted, which happened. Especially in great cities, the waste areas are a problem for acceptance in touristic usage of attractivity of local places. So, in consequence, I think it's a possible way for tourist makers, decision makers, and stakeholders in tourism to make communication situations cross over their own discipline and their own professionality. I could imagine that tourist decision makers meet with philosophers to find solutions for their problems, if they have them, in the attractivity of the atmosphere of local spaces, or to improve atmospheres which are well accepted by tourists. Well, I think it's a challenge to find new ways of thinking about a matter what is in the center of our feeling. We must learn to think about what we feel, because the sciences usually not do this. They know in a very marginal kind that emotions are happened, and that emotions are playing a role in each situation of everyday life, and also of system calculation, and in systems, in social systems, as they also that they know, but they find not the necessary consequences. They go not the necessary ways to search for new concepts.
Like to stress some points more general for anything. You try to make a point. You try to show a certain view about atmosphere. That this atmosphere has been real. But if it is so, the question, because the Hegelian metaphor seems to lose the specific trait of atmosphere. It is the idea that an atmosphere is a sort of third entity between the environment. So I'd like to understand it from your perspective, from your point of view. What is actually atmosphere? Is it third entity or something that, I don't know, in a sense, all the different traits that you analyze in your opinion? So it's something that has no sound life. It's something that comes from an meeting or immediate reality. And so we can say it is something, more subjective than objective. Or if it is something objective, it's something that has not the very trait of an external entity, external object to the world. So second question. Yes, your starting point was about two different experiences. First experience, I come back in my city and I experience myself at home. The second experience was that of being under sea. At the beginning, I was thinking that you, in the end, that you would have gone more in depth describing this experience. You because I didn't understand why, from an atmospherical point of view, why we have such different experiences. Because if I assume atmospheric point of view, normally I try to not to presuppose all my biographical data. And in a sense, being in my city should be understood in a different way as the home. In my city, so I feel at home because I grew up here and I know very well the streets where I live. So where's the atmospheric difference? Then what is what? My city and another city. Yes, there's another question about the difference between mood and atmosphere. Moods.
Oh, okay.
So, if I understand your point, the atmosphere is something that concerns me. So atmosphere, I can perceive an atmosphere, but it doesn't involve me. And the mood involves me. So, this recalled me the idea of the movement, that there is this between the atmosphere and the atmospheric. Does he inspire this difference? And according to you, why we can speak and translate this difference in English with the word atmosphere and fluid?
Okay. Three great areas of question. I try to find a trail in these three dimensions. The first was according to the objective of atmospheres. I understand it correctly. I have a problem acoustically to understand in the acoustic sense. Indeed, it's a twofold thing. It is affecting us, and we can make it to the objective, and to a topic of thinking. And so, in this view, atmospheres have two kinds of constitution. We can feel them, and we can find a distance to them, and then we can think about it. The one is an objective of scientific reflection, and the other is being with and feeling to be involved in a surrounding. That are two matters. But I think the interesting point is to find a bridge, to find a connection from the one to the other. And that is more important for the everyday life. That is a phenomenological matter of central importance to be fruitful for improvement, everyday life, everybody's life. And that's also the matter of Sloterdijk's and Foucault's target to according the role of care according ourselves. And this is exactly, I think, the point. A care which focuses our own being in the world, demands more efforts to think about what is normally only our feeling. And then we are exact at this point.
we have to make to an object of thinking, of reflecting, of making theory and science what we in the everyday life only can experience as a feeling. No? That's a twofold matter inside the question of the object character of an atmosphere. And that is connected with the second question, I think, according the point, is it a privacy matter? Is it a privacy matter or what else? I think it is both. It is not only a private matter, and it is together a public construction of a feeling. When you read the theory of cultural industry from Adorno and Horkheimer, it was written in the 40s after the Second World War in the USA. And there they are lining out principles and techniques of making people to bring people in specific kinds of feeling. That is a new reading I present here, but that is one of the core of the cultural industry by Adorno. How the industry is able to produce people's feeling. They connected this matter with a very old theme of TV and television. Today we have transformed this media into others, but the basic logarithmus has been remained. And so, consequent to your question, we must say, okay, we have the privacy character of an atmosphere. But in the political sense, it is unreducible importance to be able to produce collective patterns of feeling. Yeah? And that's, what is Werbung? What's the English word for
Advertising.
advertising? Sorry, thank you. The central matter of advertising is exactly this. Now, to produce collective matters of subjectivity. And so we must also make a difference between individuality and collective subjectivity. That's often foundable mistake in especially geographical discussion, that subjectivity is often meant as an individuality. That is very that's not deeply grounded enough. Yeah? Each individual perception is grounded in the biographical roots. That's the one side, but over the way of socialization, it is connected with social meaning and social and political cultures of feeling. We have in Germany a great debate on political correctness. Political correctness is strangulating people in her thinking and speaking. And here you have found exactly this point. People are domesticated to feel in the right way. And that means not other than they produce atmospheres in which boundaries they have to move. And this is also connected with your last question, according to the differentiation of mood and atmosphere. I don't go to differentiate this at this point, exactly because we have a lecture, especially to this matter over tomorrow. To make it short, of course, there is a connection. There are atmospheres without moods
but I think not moods without atmospheres. The difference, I think, we can found, it's a very differentiated relationship, and it's a very difficult, sometimes very confused discussion, also in history of philosophy, according to these two terms. I think the point is that a mood has an other intensity of personal involvement as an atmosphere. You can feel an atmosphere without being concerned, but a mood is this concernment by itself. And an atmosphere can expand a mood. And the boundary of this, the connection of this, that's interesting, also in political view, the interesting area of making decisions and produce feeling qualities in our circumorality. But we must discuss this in detail, and then we have to look at the history of the philosophical debate exactly on these both terms.
Other questions? No? I have some questions, of course, and very. I don't want to bore you, but okay. The first is connected with this first one. We distinguish between feeling and knowing, but the fact that we can recognize an atmosphere poses some problem, because in a sense I know that is an atmosphere, but I don't feel it. And this distinction, also Hermann Schmidt admits this distinction, is problematic in a sense that we cannot maintain the hard distinction between knowing and feeling. In a sense, when I recognize an atmosphere in the presence, in a sense I feel something, not only recognize. Because if I only recognize, is only a question of semiotic individuation of knowing, then I suppose that in a sense knowing and feeling are more mixed than we normally think. Okay, this is the first question. Second question is the fact that, more interesting for me, is the fact that in atmosphere we also encounter sub-atmospheres. In a sense, the atmosphere is a whole, okay, is a whole situation. But if I look a bit precisely, I note something different. And then suddenly this whole atmosphere becomes something other, in the sense that there are sub-atmospheres eventually interfering each other. This is not touch the question in literature on atmospheres for now. Then is a problem. If in your paper there is something of this question, I am interested in what you think about. The third question is connected to for me, an important question in general about atmosphere. For someone, atmosphere is not something you can perceive, but rather a background from that you perceive something. Then, also this question is very problematic. Atmosphere is an object, in a sense, an object, not material object, of course, but an object that we perceive, or something from that we perceive object, things, and other way. This is a question of, because in this sense, perhaps moods could have to do with the background more than with the things perceived. One of the most interesting things in your paper is the political effect of atmosphere. I noted in two places of your paper you stressed the question of the quietistic function of atmosphere. Atmosphere, in a sense, sometimes is able to block to block the excitement, the riots, and so on. Then atmosphere are something manipulable by the power, by the political and economic power. In this sense, we have the most important problem, I guess, in the atmospheric discourse. Then, atmosphere are something we can generate, intentionally generate or not. You know very well that Böhme suggests that it is possible, for example, in aesthetic work, and Hermann Schmidt denies this possibility. For him, atmosphere are there, and we cannot produce. But what we can produce are not effectively atmosphere, but impressions, technique, Eindruck technique. Then this is very problematic, and one for me the most important question now when we work on atmosphere. The last question is the very interesting your description of 8 generators of atmosphere. Then the question is, these 8 generators are a necessary condition of atmosphere. Better, which is the relationship between these generators and the atmospheres as an outcome? In philosophy, tendentially, we can speak of supervenience. Atmosphere is a sort of supervenience on generators, but is not reducible to these generators. What is your opinion about this problematic relations between the generation and the result, the outcome of atmosphere?
Okay. I try to follow these 5 points. Indeed, we sometimes we know that there is an atmosphere, and then we feel it because we know it. That's possible. It's also possible the other way, that we feel anything there is. That's very, very difficult to explain. But when we go the way to find a speech, to find a language, to express the kind of feeling, we find a kind of knowledge. I think it's a double relationship. We can come from our knowledge to a feeling, and we can come from our feeling to a feeling to a new knowledge. But I think it's the more interesting point is the one of which is discussed by Hermann Schmidt, and he said we can feel atmospheres in 2 ways, and so I think what you name knowledge is I can also name as a second kind of feeling. I understand Schmitz in this sense, and that would mean the first way we feel an atmosphere as a quality is around us, but it is not affecting us. And so you can say, this I know. He don't say, I know it. He says, I feel it, but I feel it without being involved into this feeling. And at this point we are together at the
feeling without involvement.
Yes, feeling without involvement. There we are at this point of atmospheres and moods. Then, because an atmosphere which actually captures our feeling is not more an atmosphere, but also a mood inside it, our feeling. That's a different interpretation of knowledge. No? We can say it's a knowledge with a distance, but we can also say, and I understand Smith in this sense, it is a feeling which not captures our emotional impact. Okay. The second was some atmospheres in one. Yes, I make this point to a matter of discussion in my book Atmosphären der Stadt. I think it's a very important topic what you addressed in this point. Indeed, there is mostly there is not only one atmosphere, there is a conglomeration of many atmospheres. It's very difficult to name it separate or by isolation. They are often very amorph inner contraction. There are edges, indeed, that we can feel the end of the one atmosphere and the beginning of another. But that's not a sharp boundary, but a diffuse corridor, a diffuse area. We go from the one into the other. Especially in geography, there are many interesting examples to find in urban quarters. When you leave a quarter, a special quarter, and go into another, sometimes is the boundary in the middle of the street, and you can feel here is another atmosphere than over there, and that evokes, of course, the question: how works this interfering process? It's a very difficult matter. I think it's very bounded on situational happening. What is situational in a situation happens? It could be the weather. It could be any happening happened. It could be an animal which runs into the scene, or a clouding in the air. It's also possible that that a planned architectural construction makes such an interruption in an atmosphere that we are found us in a quite another world. And that's also perhaps the last. I go to the last point, whether it's possible for actors to generate atmospheres, because when it's possible to produce them, we have one interface where we can name some processes which make another atmosphere by that what people have done. And I know the position from Schmitz. He is not quite so in a against position. I think he had learned that just in our time there are many ways and techniques and apparatus to produce atmospheres through facades from buildings, through technical constructions, through immersive mediums, through light. We will think of light design, a special professional métier in which the central matter is producing an atmosphere. Light designers produce atmospheres, not any other. Or theater, or music. And music not only in the pop music, also in the classic music, can go to Mozart, Beethoven, also one intention to produce firstly atmospheres, but more than atmospheres, only moods. They intended to transport the feeling of people from the atmosphere into a mood. Barber, Symphony for String, is a very good example for the much immersive kind of music which sets people immediately in a mood. And you find, I think, many examples for this. So I think at this point Schmitz is not up to date. I think the discussion is a long time. It's very more developed over this point, and it's
yeah, it's a knowledge today that we can, with different techniques, produce atmospheres. And when we can produce them, we have one factor where we also can seek for this interfering moments, and we can also discuss the question of power, of the power of atmospheres. What can we do, producing atmosphere, to dissolve high power, influence, and immersive power, or in the word of Baudrillard, dissuasive construction. And that's also the political importance and the question of power you addressed. The power of atmospheres is a political, very important matter, because it's a very relevant value for acceptance. For political acceptance of the local action, base of political action, as well as of national or international. And I think it's another understanding of power than we find by Max Weber. Max Weber's understanding of power is a matter of communication between persons, the relationship between persons, and the phenomenological understanding of power is the question how we can produce influence. And influence can dissolve from light, music, and temperature and other qualities of spatial surroundings. And so it's a quality of power. It's for a sociologist in sociology very alien, but in phenomenology it's important understanding. Okay, the last point was you discussed was the question: is an atmosphere an entity by itself, or is it a background? I think it's both. It is often it's a background. Think to the constructions of light designers. They make a sound background to feel special spatial environment and special feeling. But we can also say it's its own quality of feeling, which at the face of sound. Another example I named also in my lecture is the silence. I think the silence is the best possible example to illustrate that we can come into the influence and the power of an atmosphere which is not produced and which is not a background. It is itself in the maximum quality of a nothing. And so we must also differentiate a silence from a quiet situation of quiet situation. In Germany we have the different words of Ruhe and Stille. Ruhe is what's the English word or Italian for Ruhe? Also quiet. Also quiet. Okay. Silence I think have not implication of any sound. You find in a situation which is quiet, is in the longer duration of being with this situation, you can come into the feeling of silence.
because therefore is a connection from quietness to silence. But those are several and very original qualities of feeling.
Se non c'è nient'altro, chiudiamo qua. Non ho capito.
La fotocopia della relazione.
She like to have your paper
Oh.
in English.
Possible mail, I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Sì. Okay. No copyright.
Okay.
For the moment.
Yeah. I give you my card. You can send me a mail and I'll send it to you.
Bene. Thank you very much, Professor Hasse.
Okay.
That's my card, but I have you and yeah, possible to read because I read very much in English, but speak is not that much. So a lot of Italian, so I think.
Normal.
Yeah. Allora. No, in generale, solo vogliono che noi vediamo.
Oh, my laptop.
Laptop, yes.
Next lecture over tomorrow, I need no laptop because I have no images. It's impossible.
No, it's possible to
This was okay, but
no, le nostre sessioni.
hello. You see to over tomorrow?
See you over tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
We met firstly 3 years ago when you came here.
Oh yeah.
Previous conference.
Yes, in the museum of Findex. Yeah, I see.
Thank you for your hope. It was very interesting.
No, thank you. It was understandable.
I guess there was some problem with the
Speak.
Oh yeah. I was in the second line and it was okay. But there was
I have an acoustic problem to hear.
the room that
Yeah, the hall is very difficult to without any problem. But the short distance is just a problem, huh?
yes.
Oh yeah. It's a better one. Yeah. It's better in the museum.
Yeah.
But also in your institute. You see also in your institute in the university.
Yes.
Oh yeah, for sure. That is another matter. There is I wanted to discuss exactly the question.
the benefit we can use for discussion of the sketches. But less time or less time is going to do that.